I don't recall inviting the garbage up to the penthouse. The words, spoken by Vanessa Sterling, slither through the hum of polite conversation like a venomous snake. They are aimed with surgical precision at the woman standing alone in a simple, elegant black dress, a woman who meets her gaze with an unnerving stillness. Around them, in the gleaming observatory of Chicago's Pinnacle Club, the city's gilded elite pause their chatter. Champagne flutes freeze mid-air, heads turn. The discreet glow of phone screens intensifies. This is blood in the water. Perhaps you should check your records again, Dr. Evelyn Reed says, her voice a low, calm counterpoint to Vanessa's shrill accusation. She makes a small, deliberate motion, adjusting the clasp on her simple black clutch. It is the only sign of movement in a tableau of rising tension. There's no mistake. Eleanor Sterling, the family matriarch, materializes beside her daughter. Her diamond Riviere necklace, a relic of inherited empires, catches the light from the celestial chandeliers, throwing fractured rainbows across the marble floor. The staff should know their place is in the service corridors. Mason Sterling Jr., the family heir and a legend in his own vapid mind, snorts with laughter, his phone already up and recording for his legion of Instagram followers. Dad, we got a live one. Time for security? He pans the camera from Dr. Reed's impassive face to the approaching guards. Harrison Sterling Sr., the patriarch, gives a nearly imperceptible nod, a gesture of absolute authority honed over decades in hostile boardrooms. His Vacheron Constantine watch, a piece worth more than a suburban home, glints under the light. The entire Sterling family forms a perfect hostile semicircle, their unified contempt a palpable force field. Evelyn glances at her own watch, an understated Audemars Piguet, its face a subtle constellation of diamonds. Precisely 9:17 p.m. Have you ever been so profoundly misjudged that the people insulting you are literally blind to the power you hold over their entire existence? Tonight's occasion is the Sterling Foundation's annual Starlight Gala, the apex of the Chicago philanthropic season. It is a night designed to cement legacies, a night where the city's most formidable dynasties gather to congratulate each other on their benevolence. But tonight, it's about to become an execution. Two burly security guards, their bespoke suits stretched tight across their shoulders, materialize at Evelyn's side. Their earpieces hiss with quiet commands. "Ma'am, we need to see your invitation," the taller one says, his tone professionally flat, but his hand resting ominously close to his radio. With a calm that seems almost alien in the supercharged atmosphere, Evelyn reaches into her clutch. The circle of onlookers tightens, their faces a mixture of morbid curiosity and cruel amusement. Someone behind a flute of Dom Perignon whispers, "This is better than the opera." "This should be quick," Vanessa says, her voice loud enough for the growing audience to hear, a performer playing to her gallery. A woman in oversized designer glasses angles her phone better, her Instagram live counter already ticking past 1,000 viewers. The comment scroll is a blur of laughing emojis and "Karen alert" mixed with uglier sentiments. Evelyn produces a single heavy card of cream-colored stock, embossed with a simple, elegant gold crest. The guard takes it, his brow furrowing as he examines it. This appears to be valid." "Appears?" Eleanor's laugh is the sound of fine crystal shattering. "Harrison, my love, I thought the club had state-of-the-art security protocols. These things can be so easily duplicated." The insinuation hangs in the air, thick and poisonous. Several guests nod in sagely agreement, their expressions conveying a shared understanding of how the world ought to work. Mason Jr.'s camera captures it all, every condescending sneer, every flicker of contempt. His view count is skyrocketing, 15,000 in under 4 minutes. He mutters "content gold" under his breath, completely oblivious to the fact that he is filming his own immolation. "I can assure you of the invitation's authenticity," Evelyn says, her voice still impossibly level. "And how, exactly, would you do that?" Vanessa crosses her arms, a smug, triumphant look on her face. "Do you have a letter of reference? Confirmation from a board member who sponsored your ticket?" The crowd leans in. This is no longer just a social faux pas, it's a public interrogation. Dr. Eris Thorne, a respected neurosurgeon and one of the few other black guests in the room, takes a half-step forward. "Vanessa, maybe we should—" "Dr. Thorne," Eleanor cuts him off with a smile that doesn't reach her cold, calculating eyes. "With all due respect, we have standards. The Foundation's reputation, our family's reputation, depends on maintaining a certain caliber of guest. The coded racism is so blatant it's almost artful." A few guests shift uncomfortably, their liberal pieties clashing with their instinct to never cross the Sterlings. No one intervenes. A waiter, hurrying by with a fresh tray of champagne, bumps into Evelyn's arm. She steadies herself with the grace of a dancer, but the slight jostle causes her clutch to tilt. A single business card, thick and black with minimalist silver lettering, flutters to the pristine marble floor. Mason Jr. zooms in with his phone as the shorter guard stoops to retrieve it. "Apex Capital Group," the guard reads aloud. Then he stops. A flicker of confusion crosses his face. "Never heard of it," Vanessa declares dismissively. "Some little startup, probably, trying to network with their betters." The livestream comments explode, but this time a new type of message appears. "Apex Capital? Dude, that's the $80 billion hedge fund. Vanessa Sterling is a moron. Apex is a titan." But inside their bubble of marble and inherited arrogance, the Sterlings can't see the digital tide turning against them with tsunami force. "Ma'am, if you'll just come with us," the second guard says, gesturing toward a discreet side door. "We can clear this up in a private office." "Privately?" Evelyn's voice remains unchanged, yet something in her tone, a new layer of steel, makes the guard pause. Harrison Sr. checks his Vacheron Constantine. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have the evening's main announcement in exactly 13 minutes. Perhaps we could expedite this matter." The announcement is the entire reason for the gala. The Sterling Foundation is about to unveil its new partner for the Elysian Project, a groundbreaking inner-city educational initiative backed by a $1.5 billion commitment. It is the deal that will secure the Sterling name for another generation. "Of course," Eleanor adds with syrupy sweetness, "we simply can't have any disruptions during such a pivotal moment." In a shadowed corner, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, David Chen, looks up from his phone. He's seen the business card. He recognizes the name. And his journalist's sixth sense begins to scream. He sees the slight smile that finally, for the first time, touches Evelyn's lips. It is the faintest crack in her marble composure. "I understand completely," she says, speaking directly to Harrison Sr. "Time is money, especially when there are billions of dollars on the table." "Precisely?" He nods, gratified by her apparent understanding. The cavernous irony of his statement is completely lost on him. Vanessa, savoring her victory, points toward the bank of service elevators. "The main elevators are reserved for our guests tonight. I'm sure you'll understand." It is the final deliberate humiliation. In front of 200 of Chicago's most powerful figures, in front of a live online audience now cresting $20,000, they are banishing her to the servants' exit. Mason Jr. gleefully adds a caption to his story. "When the riffraff tries to crash the party." Maintaining standards, Shark Sterling Gala. The reporter, David Chen, discreetly flips open his laptop. His fingers hover over the keyboard, his eyes locked on Evelyn's face, watching for her reaction. She takes a single, measured step toward the service elevators. And then she stops. Her phone buzzes inside her clutch, a text message that makes her expression shift into something unreadable. "Actually," she says, turning to face the Sterling clan, her spine straight as a steel rod. "I believe I'll wait for the main elevators after all." "Excuse me?" Vanessa's voice jumps an octave. "I said I will wait," Evelyn repeats, her tone still conversational, but now underpinned by something cold and unbreakable. "I need to make a few calls while we wait for this to be sorted out." She retrieves her phone. The screen displays 3 missed calls from a name that makes the Wall Street Journal reporter's breath catch in his throat. Elysian Group, board chair. He knows that name, and he knows exactly what it means for the night's grand announcement. "Ma'am," the guard begins, his professional resolve wavering. "We really must insist." 12 minutes, Evelyn says softly, glancing at her watch. "Isn't that right, Mr. Sterling? 12 minutes until your legacy is cemented?" Harrison Sr. nods, his patience wearing dangerously thin. "Yes, and we will not have—" Perfect. Her finger taps the screen, dialing a number with calm, deliberate precision. That should be just enough time. The phone rings, the sound impossibly loud in the strained silence. "Hello, Julian," she says into the phone. "Yes, I know you're about to go on stage, but we have a problem with the Elysian partnership." The blood drains from Harrison Sterling's face, leaving behind a sickly gray pallor. Mason Jr. freezes, his own phone forgotten. Vanessa's champagne flute slips from her manicured fingers and shatters on the floor. Only Eleanor hasn't connected the dots. "Who is she talking to?" she hisses. "What is Elysian?" David Chen begins to type, his fingers flying across the keys with the speed of a man who knows he has the scoop of the decade. And Dr. Evelyn Reed continues her call, her voice projecting with perfect clarity across the suddenly silent penthouse. "I'm afraid, Julian, there has been a material complication with tonight's announcement." The silence in the Pinnacle Club's observatory was no longer just a lack of sound. It was a physical presence. It was the crushing weight of 200 pairs of eyes, 100,000 online viewers, and the dawning horror of one of Chicago's most powerful families, all focused on a woman in a simple black dress speaking calmly into her phone. "Yes, Julian, I'm fully aware the contracts were finalized last Tuesday," Evelyn continued, her voice echoing off the marble and glass. "But as you know, circumstances can change, rapidly." Harrison Sr., his face the color of old parchment, took a clumsy step forward. "Excuse me, miss." "Madam, who precisely are you speaking to?" Evelyn held up a single, slender finger, a gesture not of insult, but of command. "One moment, please." The gesture was so imbued with natural, effortless authority that Harrison Sterling, a man who hadn't been told to wait by anyone in 40 years, actually stopped, his mouth hanging slightly ajar. The Instagram live view count exploded. 45,000, 57,000, 72,000. The comments were a digital waterfall of shock and awe. She said Elysian. OMG, the Sterlings are about to get bodied. This woman is the main character. Family is racist AF, and it's coming home to roost. But insulated within their glass tower, the Sterlings remained blissfully, catastrophically unaware of the tidal wave of public opinion building against them. Vanessa tugged on her father's bespoke sleeve. "Daddy, what is the Elysian Group? Is that a name we should know?" Eleanor fanned her face with her auction program. "It sounds terribly familiar. Wasn't it mentioned in one of the board meeting summaries?" Mason Jr. finally lowered his phone, a flicker of genuine panic crossing his features for the first time all night. "Wait, Dad, isn't that our partner? The one we're about to announce?" The Wall Street Journal reporter, David Chen, typed like a man possessed, his story taking shape with every devastating word Evelyn uttered. The headline was already forming in his mind. Sterling Foundation Gala implodes amidst public relations catastrophe. 10 minutes, an event coordinator's voice chirped through her headset, loud enough for those nearby to hear. 10 minutes to the Elysian Project announcement. Harrison Sr.'s hand trembled as he fiddled with his cufflink, a nervous tic he thought he'd conquered decades ago. Perhaps a slight postponement is in order. "No postponement will be necessary," Evelyn said, ending her call and sliding the phone back into her clutch with the finality of a judge's gavel. "I just needed to clarify a few last-minute details." The security guards looked at each other, their bravado evaporating into sheer confusion. The taller one muttered into his collar mic, "Control, get the club manager up here, and maybe the police liaison." "Okay, quick break. Are you all breathing? Because I'm not. The power radiating from this woman is off the charts. If you are loving this epic takedown, smash that like button and let's send a tsunami of support her way. We are witnessing a master at work. Now, back to the show." Dr. Eris Thorne pushed his way through the gawking crowd. "Vanessa, I really must insist." "Eris, please," Eleanor snapped, her mask of polite society crumbling away to reveal the raw entitlement beneath. "This has become a private family matter." "A family matter?" Evelyn tilted her head, a gesture of mild curiosity that was somehow more menacing than a shout. "That's an interesting phrase, Mrs. Sterling." The way she enunciated the name, with perfect crisp pronunciation and a subtle, knowing emphasis, sent a fresh wave of dread through the room. This wasn't a social climber guessing at the power dynamics. This was a predator who had studied her prey. Mason Jr.'s phone was now buzzing uncontrollably with notifications. His Instagram story had been screenshotted and shared thousands of times. Sorry. Sterling Gala and Pinnacle Club racism were trending in Chicago. TMZ had already reposted the clip. "Ma'am?" the security guard tried again, his voice now pleading. "We just need to resolve this." "Resolution," Evelyn nodded thoughtfully, as if considering the word for the first time. "Yes, that is precisely what we all need. Mr. Sterling, correct me if I'm wrong, but Sterling Enterprises' revenue for the last fiscal quarter was, let's see, approximately $913 million, was it not?" The question, so specific and so wildly out of place, hung in the air like a hangman's noose. I beg your pardon?" Harrison's voice was a dry rasp. "Your Q3 revenue, Sterling Enterprises, $913,172,000 to be exact, give or take a few thousand. Am I remembering that correctly?" The number was too precise, too chillingly accurate for an outsider to know. Vanessa's face went white. "How could you possibly know that?" "Public information?" Evelyn said with a dismissive wave. "The SEC filings are remarkably transparent, if one takes the time to read them." David Chen stopped typing. He knew those filings. He had written about them. The number was correct, down to the dollar. 9 minutes, the coordinator announced, her voice strained. The energy in the room had morphed. It had moved past schadenfreude, beyond mere entertainment. This was now something primal, a public dismantling of a dynasty. No one was reaching for champagne. No one was checking their phones for anything other than updates on this exact situation. "I fail to see what you're implying," Eleanor said, though her wavering voice betrayed her. "I'm not implying a thing, Mrs. Sterling," Evelyn replied. "I'm stating facts. The current market position of your company, your highly publicized upcoming announcement, your critical need for strategic capital partnerships to fund future growth." She spoke with the detached authority, of a senior analyst briefing a board she was about to fire. Mason Jr., in a panic, was now furiously Googling Apex Capital Group on his phone. The search results hit him like a physical blow. Assets under management, $80 billion. North America's premier private equity firm. He shoved the phone in Vanessa's face. She stared at it, her own reflection looking back at her from the dark screen, a ghost of the woman who 10 minutes ago thought she ruled this world. 8 minutes to the announcement. The event staff were now clustered together, whispering into their headsets, their faces etched with panic. The string quartet in the corner faltered, a violin screeching out a single discordant note before falling silent. Harrison Sr. tried one last time to assert the dominance that had defined his entire life. "Young woman, I have no idea what sort of game you are playing." A game? Evelyn's laugh was a soft, melodic sound that was utterly terrifying. "Mr. Sterling, you misunderstand me. I never ever play games with my investments." The word investments landed with the force of a body blow. David Chen's fingers resumed their frantic dance. He was connecting the dots now, painting a picture the Sterlings had been too arrogant to see. Apex Capital Group wasn't just an investment firm. They were the kind of firm that bought and sold companies like Sterling Enterprises as a rounding error on their balance sheets. The livestream count blew past 100,000 viewers. The video had been mirrored to TikTok, Twitter, and LinkedIn, where it was now being analyzed by financial experts and social commentators alike. The hashtag #SterlingStareDown was trending worldwide. "Ma'am, you need to lower your voice," the guard said, a last desperate plea to a woman who held the entire room in the palm of her hand. "My voice?" Evelyn looked genuinely bemused. "I'm speaking at a perfectly normal volume. Perhaps the acoustics in this beautiful room are simply more effective than you realize." She was right. The penthouse, designed for grand pronouncements, carried her every word to its furthest corners. 7 minutes. A single bead of sweat traced a path down Harrison Sr.'s temple, carving a line through his expensive C-suite tan. Eleanor clutched her diamond riviere as if it were a talisman that could ward off this impending doom. "Harrison," she whispered, "call Robert." Robert Preston, their chief legal counsel. "An excellent idea," Evelyn agreed cheerfully. "You will certainly want to have your legal team review your partnership contracts. Pay special attention to the reputational damage clauses. I believe it's Section 14, subsection C. The statement was so casual, so conversational, and so utterly devastating in its implications. Vanessa's hands were shaking so badly she couldn't unlock her own phone. Mason Jr. wasn't even pretending to film anymore. The phone hung limply in his hand as he stared, mesmerized, at the search results for Dr. Evelyn Reed. "Harvard Business School, MBA, Stanford, PhD in macroeconomics," he whispered, the words carrying in the pin-drop silence. "Named to Forbes' Titan list 5 years in a row." Several guests overheard him, their own eyes widening in comprehension. Dr. Thorne stepped forward again, his voice calm but firm. "I believe we should all take a moment." 6 minutes to the announcement." The coordinator's voice cut through the air like a starter pistol. Evelyn checked her Audemars Piguet, the same quiet steel timepiece that suddenly seemed less like an accessory and more like a countdown clock on a bomb. "Time is indeed a precious commodity," she murmured, throwing Harrison Sr.'s own words back at him like a dagger, especially when entire legacies are on the line. The Wall Street Journal reporter hit send on his initial draft. The headline, "Sterling Foundation Gala devolves into public shaming as mystery woman stares down family dynasty." But David Chen was already furiously writing the follow-up, because he knew, as the Sterlings were about to discover in the most brutal way imaginable, Exactly who Dr. Evelyn Reed was. He knew what she did to companies that made the fatal mistake of underestimating her. The final revelation was coming. You could feel it in the air, a drop in barometric pressure just before the hurricane makes landfall. 5 minutes, the coordinator announced, her voice now a tight, strangled squeak. Evelyn smiled. It was the first full, genuine smile she'd shown all evening. It held no warmth, no comfort, only the terrifying, placid finality of an avalanche that has already begun its descent. "Julian, it's Evelyn. Yes, still here." Her voice sliced through the tension-soaked air of the penthouse. Every hushed conversation, every whispered conjecture died instantly. "I need you to go ahead and execute the Elysian withdrawal protocol, effective immediately." The words were a controlled detonation in the heart of the Sterling Empire. Harrison Sr. physically recoiled, his hand flying to his chest as if he'd been shot. The color drained from his face, leaving behind the waxy pallor of a corpse. "Wait, what?" Vanessa shrieked, grabbing her father's arm, her perfectly manicured nails dug into the fabric of his jacket. "Daddy, what's an Elysian withdrawal protocol? What does she mean?" Even as the questions tumbled from her lips, the raw panic in her voice told everyone she already knew the answer. She knew it was the sound of her world ending. Harrison couldn't answer. He couldn't seem to draw breath. His universe, so carefully constructed over generations of inherited wealth and ruthless ambition, had just been reduced to a single, devastating phrase. The entire penthouse crowd surged forward, a collective, silent gasp rippling through their ranks. They were no longer guests at a gala. They were witnesses to a historic corporate assassination. "Yes, I am fully cognizant of the financial implications," Evelyn continued into her phone, her tone as level and dispassionate as an auditor's report. "A $1.5 billion commitment. The entire partnership. Terminate it. Now." The number, $1.5 billion, hung in the glittering air, an obituary written in dollars. Eleanor's diamond Riviere seemed to be strangling her. "Billion?" she stammered. Mason Jr.'s phone finally slipped from his grasp, clattering onto the marble with a sickening crack. David Chen's eyes were wide as saucers behind his laptop screen, as his fingers blurred across the keyboard. "Breaking mystery woman at Sterling Gala commands termination of 1.5B Elysian partnership." The live viewer count surpassed 150,000. The comment feed was an unreadable river of fire emojis, queen crowns, and declarations of "get them," indoors. "I don't understand," Vanessa whimpered, her voice lost in the acoustics of their ruin. "Who is she?" Dr. Eris Thorne stepped into the void, his voice clear and resonant, a surgeon making a critical diagnosis. "Perhaps an introduction is long overdue. This is Dr. Evelyn Reed. She is the founder, CEO, and managing partner of Apex Capital Group." The name landed. Not like a firecracker, but like a tactical nuclear weapon. A shockwave of whispers and frantic Google searches ripped through the room. "Apex Capital. My God, they have 80 billion under management." She's the one who restructured the entire American automotive supply chain. She was on the cover of Forbes last month. Harrison Sr. was now leaning heavily against a marble column, the Vacheron Constantin on his wrist seeming like a cheap imitation compared to the raw power emanating from the woman in the simple black dress. 3 minutes to the announcement," the coordinator's voice croaked, a ghost at a feast of ashes. But everyone knew there would be no announcement. Mason Jr. stared at the cracked screen of his phone, at the Forbes article displayed there. Dr. Evelyn Reed, the architect of modern capitalism. The subtitle read, "How One Woman's Strategic Vision Saved 500,000 Jobs and Forged a New Industrial Future." His stomach churned with a nauseating mix of horror and disbelief. He had just filmed himself trying to have one of the most powerful people in global finance thrown out with the trash. Evelyn's call continued, each word a turn of the screw. Yes, Julian, I know the contracts are ironclad. However, they are also predicated on good faith. I would direct your legal team to Clause 14, subsection C, which allows for immediate termination in cases of actions that cause, and I quote, significant and irreparable reputational damage to the brand and its partners. She recited the legalese verbatim, as if reading from a teleprompter only she could see. The shattering of Vanessa's fallen champagne glass had been a prelude. Now it was her composure that shattered completely. No, I won't need to consult with counsel regarding the termination fees, Evelyn said coolly. Apex Capital will absorb them entirely. Consider it a necessary expenditure for maintaining corporate integrity. Harrison Sterling finally found his voice, though it was a shredded, desperate sound. Dr. Reed, please, I implore you. This is all a catastrophic misunderstanding. She held up that single finger again, and again he fell silent. The gesture now carried the weight of $80 billion. Julian, I will circle back with you in 15 minutes to discuss next steps. Yes, I am aware this scuttles the renewable energy sector announcement as well. We will source a new partner, a better one. She ended the call, the silence that followed roaring in its intensity. She turned her full attention to Harrison. Senior David Chen held his breath, his fingers poised over his keyboard, not wanting the sound of typing to break the spell. 2 minutes to the announcement, the coordinator whispered, the message now an epitaph. The staff behind the scenes were in chaos, fielding frantic calls from board members and major donors who were seeing the news break on their Bloomberg terminals. Eleanor Sterling, a woman who had orchestrated social triumphs and vanquished rivals for 65 years, with nothing more than a well-placed whisper, opened and closed her mouth, no sounds coming out. Vanessa lunged forward, grasping at straws. Dr. Reed, I'm certain we can find a way to fix this. There was just a communication breakdown. A communication breakdown? Evelyn tasted the words, her expression one of clinical curiosity. An interesting euphemism for what just occurred. She swept her gaze across the circle of their faces, the 4 members of the Sterling family, the 2 flustered guards, the enraptured crowd, and the 150,000 digital onlookers bearing witness to this public vivisection. Let's review the communication, shall we? She continued, her voice maintaining its chilling calm. I arrived at an event for which I hold a valid, paid-for invitation, and I was immediately and publicly accused of being trash. Mrs. Sterling then suggested I was part of the staff. Your son suggested I was unworthy of charity. You, Mr. Sterling, questioned my integrity by implying my invitation was a forgery. And you, Vanessa, attempted to have me physically removed through a service exit. She laid out their actions with the precision of a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. The Instagram comments were a cascade of skull emojis. She brought the receipts. Mason Jr. was staring at the Forbes article. It was a hagiography, praising Dr. Reed's brilliance, her philanthropy, her commitment to ethical capitalism. With a sickening lurch, he realized his legacy would not be his father's company, but this single viral video of him mocking the woman being hailed as a visionary. 1 minute, the coordinator's voice cracked. Harrison adjusted his bow tie, a futile gesture of maintaining control in a world that was spinning off its axis. Dr. Reed, my family, we have made an error. A grave, unforgivable error. But this partnership, it's not just about us. It's about the thousands of jobs at Sterling Enterprises, the children who would benefit from the Elysian project. Mr. Sterling. Her voice cut through his desperate plea like diamond wire. Do you happen to know the official mission statement of Apex Capital Group? He shook his head, mute. To build transformative, sustainable partnerships with organizations that share our foundational commitment to equality, innovation, and human dignity. Each word was a hammer blow against the crumbling facade of his legacy. Your family, in front of a global audience, has just provided a masterclass on your commitment to those values. The math, Mr. Sterling, is not on your side. Eleanor clutched her husband's arm. Harrison, for God's sake, do something. Call the board. Call Robert. Call the governor. But Harrison knew. He knew there was no one left to call. No amount of political influence or old-world connections could put this digital genie back in the bottle. 30 seconds, the coordinator wept. Keisha checked her Audemars Piguet, the watch that had seemed so unassuming half an hour ago, now the most powerful object in the room. I believe your announcement was scheduled for this very moment, she said softly. The family stared at her, their faces a tableau of utter devastation. Vanessa's perfect makeup was now streaked with tears. Eleanor's diamonds seemed to mock her with their cold, indifferent sparkle. Mason Jr. looked like a ghost, clutching his shattered phone, and Harrison Sterling Sr., the titan of industry, looked like a man who had aged a lifetime in the span of 30 minutes. Time for the announcement, the coordinator's voice echoed like a death knell. But Evelyn Reed wasn't done. She had saved the master stroke for last. This wasn't just about a broken deal. It was about a fundamental restructuring of power. She reached into her simple black clutch and removed a single folded sheet of paper. Heavy, cream-colored legal stock. There is one more thing you all should probably know, she said, unfolding the document with the slow, deliberate care of a person revealing the winning hand in a game of global high-stakes poker. The sound of the paper crackling in the marble silence was like the rumble of distant thunder. You see, Apex Capital Group doesn't just finance partnerships like the Elysian Project. Her smile returned, that same unsettling, razor-sharp smile. We also owned 34% of Sterling Enterprises. The air in the Crystal Penthouse didn't just go silent. It ceased to exist. For a single, terrifying moment, it felt as if all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room, replaced by the vacuum left behind by a world-shattering revelation. An empire, built over a century of ruthless acquisition and social dominance, had just been conquered in a single sentence. Harrison Sterling Sr., in a final defiant act of a lifetime spent in control, let go of the marble pillar and straightened his bespoke suit. The boardroom warrior within him took over. When faced with annihilation, one maintains the illusion of dignity. Dr. Reed, he said, his voice surprisingly steady, perhaps this is a conversation best had in a more private setting. Privately? Evelyn's soft laugh was the cruelest sound he had ever heard. Mr. Sterling, your family just gave a masterclass in the art of public humiliation. Forgive me if I believe this particular situation demands radical transparency. She held the legal document aloft, the letterhead gleaming under the chandelier light. Apex Capital Group, Strategic Equity Division. According to the mandatory Form 13D filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission, submitted precisely 18 months ago, Apex Capital Group began a strategic acquisition of Sterling Enterprises common stock. As of our last purchase 6 weeks ago, our stake stands at 34.7%. The numbers were not just precise, they were a death sentence. Mason Jr.'s cracked phone screen showed him the horrifying confirmation on an investor relations page. 34.7, he breathed, the words barely audible. Dad, that makes her the single largest shareholder. Vanessa's champagne glass, which she had somehow managed to procure and cling to like a life raft, slipped from her nerveless hand. The explosion of crystal on marble was the only sound in the room. "Largest shareholder?" she echoed in disbelief. But the Sterling Family Trust, we own 31%. 31.2% combined," Evelyn corrected her, the precision of a forensic accountant in her voice. "Broken down, Harrison Sr. personally holds 12.4%, Vanessa controls 8.7%, Mason Jr. has 6.3%, and Eleanor 3.8%. I assure you, Mrs. Reed does her homework." The live audience was now over 250,000. The chat was a frantic, unreadable torrent. "She owns them. This is the greatest hostile takeover ever. They work for her now. Black Queen Energy!" David Chen was no longer writing an article. He was documenting a legend. Explosive. Dr. Evelyn Reed reveals 34.7% controlling stake in Sterling Enterprises following viral confrontation. Family dynasty on verge of collapse. Eleanor gripped her diamond Riviere, her knuckles white. But that means," she stammered, the implications crashing down on her like a physical weight. "You could demand seats on the board. You could challenge corporate strategy. You could force leadership changes." "Yes, Mrs. Sterling," Evelyn replied, her tone as placid as a frozen lake. "That is precisely what it means." The full, terrifying scope of the situation cascaded through the room. Every executive, every lawyer, every banker present understood the new reality. With a 34.7% stake, Dr. Evelyn Reed didn't just have a voice. She was the one holding the gavel. Dr. Eris Thorne stepped forward once more, a doctor recognizing a patient going into cardiogenic shock. "Perhaps we should all find a place to sit and—" "Dr. Thorne," Evelyn acknowledged him with a warm, respectful nod. "Your concern is admirable, but this is a critical business matter, and it requires our immediate and undivided attention." She turned her gaze back to the Sterlings, her Audemar's Piguet catching the light. "Your company currently has a market capitalization of roughly $4.2 billion. My stake, therefore, represents an equity value of just under $1.5 billion. That is not an investment I am inclined to neglect." Harrison attempted to salvage something from the smoldering wreckage of his life. "Dr. Reed, Apex Capital has been a valued, if silent, partner. Our stock has yielded you a handsome return." She cut him off mid-sentence. 13% year over year. A solid, if unremarkable, performance. But financial returns are only one metric in our portfolio, Mr. Sterling. The room hung on her every word. Apex Capital has a fiduciary duty to our clients, of course, but we also have a moral charter. We pioneered mission-driven investing, ESG compliance, corporate social responsibility, DEI initiatives. These aren't buzzwords for us. They are the bedrock of our investment philosophy. Each phrase was another nail in the coffin of the old Sterling Enterprises. Tonight, in front of 250,000 witnesses, your family demonstrated a set of values so fundamentally incompatible with our corporate charter that it constitutes a material breach of shareholder trust. Vanessa surged forward, desperation making her voice shrill. "Dr. Reed, please, we made mistakes. Horrible, unforgivable mistakes. But surely we can fix this. We can issue a statement, make a donation." "Can you?" Evelyn's question was quiet, but it landed with the force of a physical blow. "Can you erase the last hour? Can you pretend that 250,000 people didn't just watch the leadership of a major American corporation attempt to publicly dehumanize a woman based on the color of her skin?" The raw truth of the accusation sucked any remaining defiance from the room. It was not an opinion. It was a recorded, documented fact. Mason Jr. looked at his shattered phone, where notifications from CNN, the BBC, and the New York Times were now popping up. They weren't asking for his side of the story. They were asking for comment on the impending collapse of his family's company. "As the majority shareholder," Evelyn continued, her voice resonating with newfound authority, I am officially calling for an emergency meeting of the Board of Directors, Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Harrison's face went slack with shock. An emergency board meeting? The agenda will be threefold, she stated, as if reading from a memo she'd written weeks ago. First, to discuss immediate leadership changes across the C-suite. Second, to authorize a full-scale, independent investigation into the corporate culture of Sterling Enterprises. And third, to implement a comprehensive, mandatory diversity, equity, and inclusion protocol at all levels of the organization. Furthermore, she added, I will be recommending the immediate and indefinite suspension of all senior management pending the outcome of that investigation. Suspension? Vanessa gasped. But I'm the CEO. You were the CEO, Evelyn corrected her gently. As of Monday morning, your continued leadership will be under review, a review in which my recommendation will carry considerable weight. The math was inescapable. With 34.7%, her recommendations weren't just recommendations. They were directives. Eleanor found her voice, a paper-thin whisper. Dr. Reed, please, this company has been our family's life work, 3 generations. Our name. Our legacy. Your legacy? Evelyn's eyebrows arched. Mrs. Sterling, your legacy is currently trending on every major social media platform. The hashtag #Sterling Racists just passed 5 million impressions and is climbing exponentially. Your legacy is being written as we speak, in the comments section of a global audience who just saw the unvarnished truth of your family's character. Yasor, the 2 security guards, now understanding the catastrophic magnitude of their mistake, began backing away slowly, trying to melt into the stunned crowd. Harrison played his final desperate card. The jobs, Dr. Reed. Think of the employees. Sterling Enterprises employs over 30,000 people across 15 states. You can't jeopardize their livelihoods over a personal slight. A personal slight. The steel in Evelyn's voice returned, sharp and lethal. Mr. Sterling, you still don't understand. This was never personal. This is business. My business. She checked her watch. Your Q4 revenue projections were already soft. The Elysian Partnership, at $1.5 billion over 5 years, represented nearly 40% of your projected growth. Without that capital infusion, you are facing a solvency crisis. The numbers were an artillery barrage. But rest assured, the 30,000 employees you suddenly care so much about will be fine. Apex Capital specializes in corporate restructurings that prioritize workforce stability while streamlining inefficient and morally bankrupt leadership. The translation was brutal. We can run your company, and we can do it better than you. Our board won't stand for this. Our shareholders will never approve it, Vanessa cried, a final futile protest. Your shareholders? Evelyn's laugh was soft, chilling, and final. Vanessa, look at me. I am your shareholder. The largest one you have? The board, as of this moment, answers to me. David Chen hit publish. The story went live on the Wall Street Journal homepage. Sterling Industries in meltdown. As new majority shareholder, Dr. Evelyn Reed seizes control after viral racism incident. Within seconds, phones buzzed all over the financial world. The agenda for Monday's meeting will be concise, Evelyn continued, dictating the terms of their surrender. First, the establishment of a $50 million fund, seeded by Sterling Enterprises, dedicated to grants for minority-owned businesses. Second, the appointment of an independent chief diversity officer with veto power over all new hires. And third, the complete replacement of the current senior leadership team with executives who reflect the values of a modern, inclusive, and profitable corporate America. The only alternative, she added softly, is a full-scale hostile takeover, which, given the events of tonight, I am supremely confident my fellow shareholders would be more than eager to support." The room held a collective breath, processing the finality of that threat. A hostile takeover wouldn't just mean the loss of their jobs. It would mean the complete and total erasure of the Sterling name from the company their family had founded. Harrison Sterling looked around the gleaming penthouse, at the crystal chandeliers his great-grandfather had imported from Austria, at the portraits of the men who had built this dynasty, at the empire that had taken a century to construct and less than an hour for his own family's arrogance to demolish. What do you want from us?" he asked, his voice broken. Evelyn carefully folded the legal document and placed it back in her clutch. The simple, elegant bag now seemed to contain the weight of an entire corporation. "What I want, Mr. Sterling, is what Apex Capital has always wanted. A partner we can be proud of, an investment that reflects our values." The weight of her words settled over the shattered family like a funeral shroud. "Monday morning, 9 a.m., my office. Don't be late." She turned to leave, the crowd parting before her as if she were royalty. Then she paused, looking back over her shoulder one last time. "And Mr. Sterling, you should begin drafting a public apology, not a press release written by lawyers. Something real, something that acknowledges the profound harm your family has caused. The board and the world will be expecting it by close of business on Tuesday. The aftermath was not a storm. It was a climate change. Monday morning, 9:03 a.m. The Sterling Enterprises boardroom, a space paneled in dark, imposing mahogany, had never felt so much like a mausoleum. Dr. Evelyn Reed entered, not with a hostile entourage, but with a quiet, two-person team, a corporate governance expert and a leading diversity consultant. She didn't take Harrison's seat at the head of the table. She took one in the middle, directly across from him, transforming the symbol of power into a platform for partnership. The emergency board vote was a formality. Vanessa was not just suspended but removed as CEO, her severance package contingent on the completion of an intensive 6-month executive leadership and ethics program. Mason Jr. was stripped of his COO title and his board seat, effective immediately. Eleanor's position as head of the Sterling Foundation was terminated. The board, terrified of shareholder lawsuits and public fallout, approved every single one of Dr. Reed's reform proposals unanimously. The changes were immediate and systemic. The $50 million Minority Enterprise Fund was not just announced, but operational within a week, its first grants issued to Black and Latino-owned businesses in Chicago. A new Dignity and Equity Protocol was drafted and implemented, making Sterling Enterprises a pioneer in transparent, accountable corporate culture. The company's diversity, hiring, and promotion metrics, once a closely guarded secret, were now published quarterly for public review. The new mission statement, co-authored by Dr. Reed and a committee of employees, was carved into the lobby wall. To build with integrity, lead with inclusion, and profit with purpose. The digital storm became a case study. The video of that night at the Pinnacle Club became required viewing in MBA programs at Harvard, Wharton, and Stanford, a textbook example of modern corporate crisis management. Mason Jr.'s cringeworthy content spawned a new field of academic study on the weaponization of social media and the catastrophic risks of unchecked privilege. Dr. Reed didn't install herself as CEO. Instead, her search committee appointed Dr. Imani Carter, a brilliant black woman with a track record of turning around Fortune 500 companies. Dr. Carter's first act was not to issue edicts, but to embark on a listening tour, meeting with factory floor workers, junior accountants, and community leaders to understand the company from the ground up. The stock, after an initial 28% plunge, began a steady climb as ethical investment funds, ESG funds, bought up massive positions, betting on the long-term profitability of a company genuinely committed to reform. The cancelled Elysian project was replaced by the Phoenix Initiative, a larger, more impactful partnership with a consortium of community-based organizations that empowered residents directly, rather than through a filter of corporate philanthropy. The personal reckoning was profound. Vanessa spent 6 months in a grueling program that deconstructed her entire worldview. The process was agonizing, forcing her to confront the unconscious biases that had led to that disastrous night. She emerged not broken, but humbled. In her first interview, she admitted, "I spent my life believing my success was earned. I was wrong. It was inherited. And I mistook that inheritance for merit." She now leads the Sterling Foundation, rebranded as the Phoenix Foundation, which has become a national model for equitable community investment. Mason Jr. vanished from social media. He resurfaced a year later, not with a podcast or a redemption tour, but with a quiet announcement that he was transferring the bulk of his trust fund into a venture capital firm dedicated to funding underrepresented founders. His first investment was in a tech startup created by a young black woman from the South Side of Chicago. Eleanor, stripped of her social standing, found a different kind of purpose. She began volunteering at an inner-city literacy center, reading to children whose lives she had never before considered. Her Diamond Riviere was sold at auction, with the proceeds funding a new library for the center. A year later, at a United Nations summit on ethical capitalism, Dr. Evelyn Reed delivered the keynote address. In the audience sat hundreds of global CEOs. "Power," she told them, her voice calm and steady, "is not defined by your ability to dominate, but by your willingness to elevate. It is not about winning a fight. It is about changing the conditions so that the fight is no longer necessary." The true victory was not the takeover. It was the transformation. Sterling Enterprises, once a bastion of old guard entitlement, was now a case study in how accountability could become an asset. Its stock outperformed the S&P 500, its employee retention rates were the highest in the industry, and its brand loyalty soared. Dignity, it turned out, was very profitable. These are the stories that must be told. Stories of quiet strength and strategic genius. Stories where black brilliance doesn't just break down doors, but redesigns the entire building. Stories of transformation that prove real change is possible. What would you have done if you were in Dr. Reed's shoes? Have you ever witnessed a moment where quiet competence triumphed over loud arrogance? Share your thoughts and your own stories in the comments below. If this story of strategic justice resonates with you, share it. Let it serve as a reminder that the most powerful voice is not always the loudest one. And please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. We are dedicated to telling the real stories of the architects of a better, more equitable world. Because together we aren't just sharing narratives, we are building a new one.